Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dev Diary. So let's just cut to the chase. I've wanted to make a more chaotic version of Pokemon's Auto Battler ever since I first saw it in action. And of course, use it as simply a base to add even more content to. In this case, attempt to reimagine Pokemon's battle mechanics in general. Now, before we get too far into the madness, remember to leave a like if you enjoyed today's video and subscribe if you're new to the channel. I post weekly game dev videos of all sorts, so turn on notifications so you don't miss any of those future episodes. Now with that said, let's get to that madness. First, these are totally original characters and creatures, and resemblance to existing properties is totally a coincidence. Having said that, we've got reference data for our 4 starter monsters: Char, Spur, Bulb, and Rata. Again, totally original creatures. Anyway, we've got basic stats one would expect from a creature battler, which so happens to also involve the elements. Again, totally original. Similar reference data is also available for all current attacks in the game. Majority are basic normal attacks, but there are specific elemental attacks for water, fire, and plant. Very original. So, currently, player-owned and enemy monsters both utilize the same code, and for the time being they have 2 states. The first is their default movement state. Occasionally, they will try to update their position to be nearer to the player and move accordingly. However, if they spot an enemy nearby, they will begin to focus said enemy. This is currently handled via a general distance check, and when near enough to their target, this will send the monster into their attack state. Now, before we get into how attacks function, let's talk about how attacks work. In that global reference guide mentioned at the start of the video, each monster is given a charge value and 2 attacks. Monsters will, by default, use their first attack, which is considered their quote-unquote light attack, and each successful hit adds a point to their charge count. And when fully charged, the monster has a chance to begin using their second, stronger attack. So, for example, Char will swipe at their opponents until they land 3 hits, to which it will start occasionally spitting some hot fire. We'll touch on this again later, but that's the gist of how the combat currently works. Attacks in general are sequenced events that are broken down into 2 types, melee and ranged. So, for example, the tackle is a melee attack that will propel the attacking monster in the direction of its target for a few frames. While moving, a hitbox is created to check for collisions with an enemy. And once the attack has concluded, the hitbox is removed, a cooldown begins, and the process is ready to repeat itself. The ranged attacks such as the bubble attack work similarly. Projectiles are spawned based on reference data, and much like the hitboxes, projectiles move based on their attack type and check for enemy collisions. And for the time being, there isn't much diversity in the projectiles. The bubble and flame projectiles slow down over time but last longer, and the leaf attack maintains momentum but has a shorter lifespan. Now, when these attacks collide with enemies, this triggers a chain of functions to apply damage to the affected party. I didn't have time to apply weaknesses and resistances, but the affected will enter a hurt phase when damaged. And since our monsters are currently immortal, a knockback effect is all that's really applied. Knockback itself is just extra momentum applied to a target to keep things moving, literally. And in case you're curious, the player doesn't really do anything at the moment. They can move around the battlefield, but they're mostly there to act as the point of interest for monsters to gravitate towards. More is planned for how the player factors into the gameplay, but we're taking things one step at a time. And speaking of plans, the hope for the attack system is to be a progression-based system. Because while we are taking huge inspiration from Pokemon here, this project is a huge melting pot of ideas. The hope is that as battles, or maybe the game in general, progresses, the monsters will grow and become stronger. Evolutions mean stronger attacks, meaning that what was once considered quote-unquote strong at stage 1 is considered quote-unquote light at stage 2. There are also plans for supportive and defensive moves that will hopefully allow for fun synergies. Fingers crossed. And to be honest, not a lot of thought has gone into this beyond creating a chaotic battlefield of monsters duking it out. Originally, the theme was a chaotic battle of literal rocks, paper, and scissors going at it for supremacy, but Pokemon sounded more appealing, and it actually gives us more potential to work with thematically. Yeah, this one is one of those projects that started as a simple idea that I kind of want to explore and see what else can be done with it. We will most likely be back for more because there's clearly a bunch of ideas left to try out before deciding its fate. So be sure to let me know what you thought of the start to this project. Are you on board with this, or is it just way too much chaos to deal with? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, if you would like to play some of my other games previously featured on the channel, or want early access to these weekly game dev videos, subscribe to my Patreon. With that said, brings us to the end of today's Dev Diary, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.